So in this session, we're going to reflect on the civilizational significance and legacy of Nalanda, a center of ancient learning, diplomacy, and spiritual dialogue. Please join me in welcoming diplomat, poet, and best-selling author, Ambassador Abhay K, as he discusses his acclaimed book, a national bestseller, Nalanda, How It Changed the World. So please give him a huge round of applause. Ambassador, may I request you to please come on stage to dig deeper into the historical research and literary narratives that the ambassador has provided about Nalanda and its relevance in today's knowledge-driven world. I'm delighted to invite Ms. Shweta Satpathy. She's a certified independent director, real estate luxury leader, and podcaster, 27 plus years of global marketing evangelist with experience spanning countries including USA, UK, Africa, Europe, and the UAE. She's a digital media geek and content inhaler, also avid traveler, and enjoys diversity in all aspects. So please welcome our speakers with a huge round of applause. Let me give a little brief before they begin the conversation about this very important book. So it traces the journey of Nalanda University from its establishment to its destruction in the 12th century. The ambassador has closely examined how the iconic seat of learning in Bihar flourished as the world's first residential university, attracting scholars from several countries. So they will be building a conversation further, but let me also remind our viewers and the audience here that the ambassador has written many, many books. I think he must have lost count by now as to how many he's written, but some of the most prominent ones in which have received great reviews. So you must know the names so that you can buy it and get it signed. The Alphabets of Latin America, he's the editor of the Book of Bihari Literature, the Bloomsbury Book of Great Indian Love Poems, Capitals, New Brazilian Poems, and the Bloomsbury Anthology of Great Indian Poems. So his translations of Kalidas, Meghdut, and Ritu Samara from Sanskrit won him the KLF Poetry Book of the Year Award 2020-21. Also, his translation of Magahi novel Phul Bahadur has been published by Penguin. His paintings on the Buddhist philosophy of Shunyata have been exhibited at Bihar Museum in Patna, which you must visit. So with a huge round of applause, let's welcome our speakers and they will take the conversation forward. Thank you.
Can everyone hear? First of all, thank you to Delhi Literature Festival, the entire team, Kunal, Ajay, my partners over here. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. This has been an honor to sit with Abhay. Being a light reader, it took me a while to absorb Nalanda because it is so researched. I took help of ChatGPT to summarize it for me. However, what it did is give me an oversight of it, but the master is sitting right next to me. My first question for the audience, on behalf of the audience, and we will give you enough time to ask your questions towards the end of the talk so that you can ask as much as you want to. Abhay, we already know who you are. One of the, when he joined, he was one of the youngest IFS officers. So the bird's eye view of something as complex as Nalanda University had to come from him because you yourself hail from Nalanda. First, how did you come about this product, a project, and such a big thesis on this?
Well, most of you would know this, that Nalanda is located in Bihar. And it's located very close to a place called Rajgir. And the old name of Rajgir was Rajgrih. And Rajgrih was the first capital of Magad. Bihar was known as Magad up to 12th century AD. And Rajgir being the capital of Magad, in 6th century BC, when the second phase of urbanization happened in the Indian subcontinent, after Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, it was Magad which had the most number of urban centers. And Rajgir in the 6th century BC was like New York of today. It was the place where everybody wanted to be if one wanted to become famous or rich or enlightened. So Gautam Siddhartha, you know him as Buddha, from Kapilvastu, he came to Rajgrah in search of gurus, in search of teachers who could show him the path of enlightenment. But spending some time in Rajgrah, he could not find anybody worthy. So he moved to Bodh Gaya, which was very close to the ancient city of Gaya. Have you heard of Gaya? Yes. Gaya is as old as Banaras. And Gaya today is one of the most visited places for anybody who wants to pay homage to their ancestors. So it was near Gaya. Buddha, you know, Gautam Siddhartha was a very sharp-minded person. So when he left Kapilvastu, he chose places very carefully. So coming to Rajgrah is a very well thought, where could he go after he left his home. And then choosing a place near Gaya, on the banks of the Niranjana river, Bodh Gaya, where he got enlightenment, was another very well thought out selection of place. So after he gets enlightenment at Bodh Gaya, he goes next to Sarnath. And where is Sarnath located? Near Kashi. Yes, it's next to Kashi, next to Banaras. And it is at Sarnath he gives his first sermon. And that sermon is a major event. It's called Dharma Chakra Pravartan, or the turning of the wheel of Dharma. So that happens, and after what happens after that? After Sarnath, what does he do? So after doing Dharma Chakra Pravartan in Sarnath, he comes back to Rajgrah. Because if you have a new philosophy, if you have a new religion, first person you want to be on your side is the ruler of the most powerful kingdom of that time. So he wanted King Bimbisar to be on his side. So he comes to Rajgrah. Bimbisar offers him a bamboo grove, or Venuvan. And it is in Venuvan he meets two of his most important disciples. And these disciples are Shariputra and Mogglayana. Both of them are from Nalanda, which is located just 15 kilometers away from Rajgrah. Nalanda is a suburb of Rajgrah that time. It's like what is Noida to Delhi. And these two, Shariputra and Mogglayana are bosom buddies from the childhood. They were both born in Nalanda. And they have, as friends, make a pact, they have made a pact that whoever gains enlightenment first will tell the other. And both of them will gain enlightenment together. This is their pact. So, Shariputra is a disciple of another guru or another philosopher called Sanjay. And when he hears Buddha at Venuvan, he takes away 500 followers of Sanjay. This Ajayji would know better. And takes them to Buddha. So what would Buddha do? Once you have few followers, and then suddenly you have a surge of 500 followers. So Buddha, being very happy, makes him the first chief male disciple. And Mogglayana, as they had a pact together, so of course Shariputra would have told that, he is my childhood friend. And so Buddha makes him his second chief male disciple. And three of them, Buddha, Shariputra, and Mogglayana, are known as three friends in Southeast Asian countries, in Thailand, in Myanmar, other places. And when their relics are taken there from India, thousands of people throng the streets to see them, even today. While Shariputra and Mogglayana have been forgotten in Nalanda. Nobody knows them. So now why Sariputra is important, why I'm telling you this story, because the 300 years later from this event, from when Sariputra becomes the Dharma Senapati or the chief male disciple of Buddha, Samrat Ashok, after the Kalinga war, adopts Buddhism and he comes to Nalanda. The capital now has shifted. The capital of Magad is no more Rajgarh. It has shifted to Patliputra. He comes back from Patliputra to Nalanda and erects a stupa for Shariputra. And that is the stupa, even today, is the highest monument at Nalanda. If you see the ruins of Nalanda, the tallest building, the tallest ruin is actually the Sariputra's stupa. It was first a stupa, then it over seven phases of construction, ranging from 3rd century BCE up to 10th century AD, it turns into a chaitya or a temple, and it exactly looked like the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, but much larger. And this is the center. This stupa and chaitya of Shariputra becomes the center around which the whole Nalanda University develops. So if you visit Nalanda today, you can ask the guide. Most of them, they tell you that's the library, but that's not the library, that's the Shariputra's stupa. So now, when Samrat Ashok builds a stupa for Shariputra, he also establishes a vihar, a Buddhist vihar there. And that Buddhist vihar hosts Buddhist scholars, are supported by rich merchants like Suvishnu and many others over centuries. And for 300 years, it functions for 300 years before a great philosopher from South India arrives there. And his name is Nagarjuna. And Nagarjuna comes there in the 1st century AD, 300 years after the construction of that stupa. And it is Nagarjuna who is the philosophical founder of Nalanda. Nalanda's philosophical base is led by this great philosopher Nagarjuna. And he comes with this philosophy of sunyata or madhyamaka. It's called madhyamaka or sunyata or emptiness. And Nagarjuna says that this philosophy was given by Buddha himself. But more accurately, it was Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, because, since the time of Buddha, 600 years have passed. And Buddhism itself have gone through lots of reforms, lots of changes. So Buddhism has the Theravada Buddhism, which was the original Buddhism of Buddha, has now turned into Mahayana Buddhism. And the difference is that in Theravada, Buddha is considered as a human being. In Mahayana Buddhism, he becomes a god. And the concept of bodhisattvas is introduced. So there were no bodhisattvas, the concept of bodhisattvas, during the Buddha's time. So now Nagarjuna says that he retrieves the key texts of Buddhism called Pragya Paramita Sutras from the Nagas. And that's why his name is Nagarjuna, who wins over the Nagas, who is victorious over the Nagas. And Nagarjuna says that these texts were actually given by Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to Shariputra, the first disciple of Buddha, in Rajgarh at the Gridhkut Parvat during the time of Buddha. So Nagarjuna is actually the writer of these Pragya Paramita Sutras, but to make it look more cool, he wants to make it 600 years dated, back, and attributes it to Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Now, Nagarjuna is followed by some other great philosophers like Aryadeva, Shantideva, and two brothers Asanga and Vasubandhu from the northwest of India, from the Swat Valley, who come with a new philosophy called Yogachar. Yoga Achar, the practice of yoga. And in 5th century, 500 years later, in 5th century AD, the first Gupta, Kumar Gupta I, he lays the foundations at Nalanda of a concrete vihar, concrete Buddhist vihar. And generally the foundation of Nalanda Vishwavidyalaya or Nalanda Mahavihara is considered to be in the 5th century AD. From 5th century AD onwards, you have various dynasties, the Gupta dynasty, the Pala dynasty. In the middle, you have Harshvardhan, King Harshvardhan. And so Nalanda lasts up to early 14th century. In late 12th century, it is considered that the university is destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khalji, but it survives the destruction and keeps functioning till the early 14th century. This is the brief summary of Nalanda.
Can you hear me? Okay, so the summary, Abhay, is also so heavy, but it's quite nuanced also. First question, apparently it disappeared from the minds of human consciousness around the 14th to 15th and 16th century, in spite of so much evidence being there, in spite of 10,000 students, 3,000 teachers, 9 million books, hectares and hectares of land which was there. How did we manage to let it disappear? What happened, step by step? Because if we have to frame it so we really understand how we defend such a legacy.
Right. So we have to look at the 12th century India. So from 10th century onwards, in India, you have internal divisions. So you have Rashtrakutas in the south, Palas in the east, and the Chauhans in the west. So they are all fighting each other. And this is a lesson for today's India. From 10th century to 12th century, India is politically divided, economically weak, militarily weak. So what happens that it leads to the invasion from the northwest. Prithviraj Chauhan, he's defeated in the second battle of Tarai. And Bakhtiyar Khalji is nobody but, he's a general, he's a military general of Muhammad of Ghor, apart from Qutbuddin Aibak. So you have, he passes through North India unopposed. He's moving to, towards Odantpuri, which is just 10 kilometers away from Nalanda, with only 200 horses.
Wow.
And he is not being checked by anybody. So you have the fall of, a political vacuum in North India by the end of 12th century, by the early 13th century.
But this wasn't the first time. This wasn't the first time that Nalanda was attacked. I think Huns attacked it early in the 5th century, then it was 6th century, and then finally Mr. Khilji over here. What was the exact loss?
So see, Nalanda was attacked by the Huns as well as soon as it was being founded by the Sakraditya or Kumar Gupta I. But then, you had a very strong and united India. You had the Guptas, who controlled most of India, and they were not fighting each other. You had Harshvardhan, who was in charge of the North India. India was militarily and politically and economically strong. After that, Palas, for 400 years, the Pala dynasty, provided very stable and politically strong governance or rule in at least in Magad. So this Nalanda was damaged, but it was rebuilt. But after the invasion of the Turks in 12th century, there was nobody to rebuild it. That's the difference.
Hence we lost. You had said somewhere in the book that Nalanda had sacred geography. Since we visibly can't see it, can you explain to us what it was like? So, like an architect?
So Nalanda's sacred geography means that, it's located very close to Bodh Gaya, which is the place of enlightenment of Buddha. It is very close to Rajgriha, which was the place for second turning of the wheel on the Gridhkut Parvat. And it was on the trade routes to Patliputra from, so you have, its geography is located in the plains of the fertile plains of Magadh. So that's what Nalanda's sacred geography is. That's why it became such a famous monastery.
Another thing that I heard, that the admission process of Nalanda was very, very tough, and it involved a lot of debates. They used to get them through the top guys. These people would come, debate, and then the students would be picked up. Could you tell me a little bit more about the admission process and the quality of students then?
So Nalanda had Dwarpala Pandit. So when you went to seek entry into Nalanda, you had to answer questions by the guard. The guard himself was so well versed, well knowledged, that you had to be competent enough to answer the questions of the guard. If you could answer those questions, you could enter the Mahavihara. And see, there the percentage of entry was only 20 to 30%. Not out of 10, only 2 or 3 could get in. And, yes, and not reservation, but very, very, very meritorious, selection process. And once you entered Nalanda, the difference between Nalanda model of education and today, the difference is that Nalanda, the focus in Nalanda was to acquire knowledge. So once you entered the Mahavihara, you did not have to bother about your hostel fees or your tuition fees, and degrees. There were no degrees at Nalanda. So the whole institution was geared to push the boundaries of knowledge to what could be achieved by the humanity. So you had a knowledge community, a residential hostel. You have, Nalanda also pioneered the architectural design of modern universities. So you have the universities of Oxford and Cambridge today. They use the same plan, the courtyard structure which was developed at Nalanda. So in Nalanda you have a courtyard. It's a rectangular shaped courtyard, and around the courtyard you have the rooms, the cells of the monks, where they stay, and they come out in the courtyard where the lectures happen. So it's all integrated, and you have a library there which is known as Dharmaganj. The library is the most precious, most important library in the whole world in the first millennium. It has 3 buildings, and one of them is 9 stories tall, just like those days. And you have the scholars coming from all across the world in awe to find authentic manuscripts. It is believed to host millions of valuable manuscripts written on palm leaves, folios of palm leaves. So you have hostel facility, you have, complete residential, you don't have to go out of the campus, everything is within, you have a great library, you have, 200 villages around Nalanda supporting the Mahavihara. They are supplying every day rice, butter, milk, they are all the provisions which are needed for the teachers and the students. So Nalanda, the Xuanzang, the Chinese traveler, he describes that there are 10,000 students and teachers living at Nalanda in 7th century AD. He visits India in the first half of the 7th century AD, and he spends 5 years at Nalanda. He comes all the way from Tang Dynasty, China, using thousands of miles of of journey, risking his life. He comes to Nalanda to copy the authentic Yogacara Sutras, Yogacara Bhumi. So, which he describes, his description of Nalanda in 7th century is incredible. It's all in the book. You can read it.
You have to read the book, yes. You said there were, well, somewhere I read in your book, over 9 million books were in Nalanda. Somewhere around 12,000 of them were salvaged. 12 to 13,000 were salvaged, and apparently they are in Los Angeles now, which is shocking because I don't know where it is in India. When you lost, you didn't just lose books, you lost ethos, you lost a way of living for students. You think that can be woven into today's cultural system effectively? Because right now we are quite different from where it was. Please comment.
Yes, of course. So, see, there are some key takeaways from Nalanda's, the way Nalanda Mahavihara functioned. And one of them is what the modern universities can replicate, is the interdisciplinary learning. I think there is some attention to that in the new education policy. But, you see, at Nalanda, nobody was really waiting to get a degree. So they were reading voraciously, debating voraciously, everything which came their way. So that's why, Nalanda's one of the major contributions of Nalanda is the number 0. Shunya. And why did Shunya happen at Nalanda and not anywhere else? Because it was at Nalanda that the philosophy, of Shunyata, which was given by Nagarjuna, the metaphysics of Shunyata, was informing the mathematics of Aryabhat. Because Aryabhat was not only studying mathematics, he was also studying philosophy, he was also studying astronomy, he was studying everything which was available, grammar, medicine, logic. And therefore you have Aryabhat for the first time using 0 as a digit in the history of humanity at Nalanda. So interdisciplinary learning is the first key takeaway from Nalanda. That if you want to really achieve something, really push the boundaries of knowledge, you have to be not focusing on one subject, but you have to have this ability to absorb everything and connect the dots. Then only you would be able to discover something truly unique and truly innovative. Yes, the holistic approach to education. The second takeaway from Nalanda is that state must take care of, make knowledge acquisition or education a public good. At Nalanda, the state was the dynasties. They were dedicating 200 villages, 100 to 200 villages for the running of Nalanda, for the maintenance, for the day-to-day functioning, its finances, so that they did not have to bother about begging, monks, Buddhist monks going out and beg for food every day and come and study. No. So students today, what are they doing? They are taking loans from here and there. They don't have library facilities. They don't have, digital access to the best resources. So we can think of a digital Dharmaganj today from Nalanda's experience. A digital Dharmaganj in which we could, make available to each and every student whatever is the best available in the world. And that's the challenge which, more hostel facilities for students, more maybe the, free internet for them. So that they are able to get whatever is possible and focus on studying rather than taking loans and repaying them after getting a job. So that's treating education as a public good. The third one, third takeaway from Nalanda. Nalanda was the first institution of its kind in the human history which had a major international component. So Nalanda did not have students only from Magadh. It had students from all over the world, not only from India, but all across Southeast Asia, from Central Asia, wherever the world, I mean, that time the world was only limited, it was, the North or South America was not part of the world. So, so whoever, was aware of Nalanda's existence, everybody came to Nalanda. And it was the first experiment in internationalization of education. Today, we have millions of Indian students going abroad. But those days, these millions of students came to Nalanda, they came to India. What are we not doing that we are not able to attract international students? Can we learn from Nalanda experience? So these are some of the, takeaways from Nalanda.
The reason why we are here is to understand that we had an establishment like Nalanda. The critics say you're over-romanticizing the past, right? They say the global impact of Nalanda is overstated. It's not really relevant to today's education system. When you have critiques like that, what kind of an argument this audience should have so they can have that conversation back?
Well, see, I think most of us, when we discuss Nalanda, we are really, geared towards asking how Nalanda was destroyed. But nobody really bothers how Nalanda contributed in shaping our modern world. That's why, this book is called Nalanda, How It Changed the World. And here, I have listed how Nalanda has changed the world. What are its key contributions? How without a Nalanda, the world would not be the same place. So this is very important to know. And so let me give you some examples.
Thank you.
Where it is actually, as Dr. Ambedkar says, that, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. And therefore, we should not forget the past, especially in the light of what we have gone through a period of colonization. And what we were told during colonization by Macaulay, that a part of the British Library has more information and knowledge than the rest of
Yes.
what you have all done over millennia. But that's not the reality. Through this book, I want to show the reality. Reality is the other way around. It is Nalanda where the idea of university has developed. From its journey from a vihara founded by Emperor Ashok in 3rd century BCE to a Mahavihara by the 5th century AD. That's how, so Nalanda, did not have just one or two subjects. It had dozens of subjects being taught there by the best professors from not only India, the best students not only from India, but from all across the world. So Nalanda was next to what we call universal. And what is a university? It comes from the idea of universalism. Universal number of subjects, universal background of students and teachers, and universal quest for knowledge. And that's how, and this is, so the first major contribution, today universities across the world owe it to Nalanda. Oxford and Cambridge, they owe it to Nalanda that they have a campus design which was developed here. The second, the European Renaissance, you see how the numbers, the Indian numbers, 1 to 9 and then 0 have traveled from India to the West. Europe by the 12th century, when Nalanda was almost, at its sunset hour, was using Roman numbers. They were multiplying x multiplied by XL. How much is it? You see how difficult it was for them. So it was through the Arabs, when the Aryabhat's work, Aryabhatiya, was translated into, was further improved by Brahmagupta, and through his book, and which was translated into Arabic as Sindh Hind and then traveled via Algeria to Italy. It was the merchants of Venice who were the first one to use the Indian number systems because it made their accounting so easy, so much easier. And it was that, the use of Indian numbers which led to the Renaissance in Europe 300-400 years later. So I'm not romanticizing anything. These are all, everything I have written is based on reference and, is the historical fact. But we, by the colonizers, we are being told the other way around, that no, you have not contributed anything. Your democracy is ours. All your science is ours. The scientific revolution in the medieval world has happened because of Nalanda. Because Nalanda used the recursive argument method. And what is recursive argument method? Nalanda perfected this argument method. So all the teachings at Nalanda was done through this debate and discussion. And debate was a structure. It was not that you say something and, then respond by something. So this is called recursive argument method of debating, where you have an argument followed by a sub-argument, followed by a sub-argument, followed by another sub-argument. And that is, that's not me, it's Christopher Bakewith who proves that the foundation of the modern scientific revolution, the scientific method, comes from the recursive argument method of the Buddhists. So the modern colleges, are nothing but the Buddhist viharas turned into madrasas and then turned into colleges. And universities are nothing but, the Mahaviharas. So that's the research, So not only that, Nalanda's contribution in the field of logic, in the field of medicine, in the field of public health, alchemy, are all, written, in detail in this book, and how it has changed and shaped our modern world. So here, there is nothing romanticizing here. It's all facts. And the facts which we need to know ourselves. The one thing what colonizers took away from us is the confidence, so that you cannot believe in yourself. So when I had started researching for this book, I was not sure whether Nalanda was a university in the modern sense, or it was just a Buddhist Mahavihara, mainly focused on Buddhism. But by the end of the book, when I finished researching for this book, finished writing this book, it was clear, crystal clear, clear as daylight, that the idea of university has originated at Nalanda.
Lovely. I hope we have enough resources to counter these arguments. Another one, really for all of us, and let me read this because it's so beautifully phrased. The destruction of Nalanda, it was but a mere play of social religious dynamics and a simple decline, is what they counter, and not Bhaktiar Khilji's attacks. How do you counter that? Because it's so much more than that for them.
So see, Buddhism was already in decline in India, Northwest particularly, even in the 7th century, when Xuanzang had traveled from China, Tang China, to India. And in his accounts, the Western records on the Tang, during the Tang times, Western records of the Tang dynasty, he writes that, the Buddhist monasteries have fallen into ruins in the Northwest, particularly in the Swat Valley, in present-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. But Buddhist monasteries and Buddhism was at its peak in Magad, particularly in Bihar, that time known as Magad, Bengal, etc. And during, when Xuanzang visited, Guptas had already gone. The famous Gupta dynasty had left the reins of power, and it was Harshvardhan, the king Harshvardhan, who was ruling India that time. And Xuanzang, he notes how Harshvardhan patronizes Nalanda, how he has rebuilt some of the viharas. erected a huge 80-feet monument of Buddha and has dedicated 200 villages for the upkeep of Nalanda, and regularly hosts these philosophical debates, what we call Tark, in Kannauj. So these descriptions are given by Xuanzang, and the destruction of Nalanda, it's usually said that it happened in 1196 by Bakhtiyar Khalji. Though there is no, there is a historical record of Bakhtiyar Khalji going to Odantpuri, which is present the Bihar Sharif, with 200 horsemen and destroying the monastery at Odantpuri. This is written in Tabaqat Nasiri by a Delhi Bed historian. His name was Minhaz-e-Sirazi. And Minhaz-e-Sirazi was writing a general history of all the Sultanate period rulers, slave dynasty rulers. And in that, he gives a record of Bakhtiyar Khalji going there. But his record is also not first hand. He hears, he listens to two of the soldiers who have participated in this attack at Odantpuri in a place called Gauda in Bengal. And he gives their description. Of course, he does not talk about Bakhtiyar going to Nalanda in 1196. But, all of you would know that Bakhtiyar Khalji was, if you look at his motive, he was a raider. He was trying to loot as much as possible, whatever he came on his way, to gather quick wealth, so that he could lay foundation to a new dynasty in the east, particularly in Magad. And his capital was Devkot in Bengal. So, but Bakhtiyar Khalji, he would not spare Nalanda, because Nalanda is just 10 kilometers away from Odantpuri. And then he would not really, say that, okay, Odantpuri is good enough, and 10 kilometers I want to go there and leave Nalanda at peace. So obviously he would go there, though there is no written evidence, no written historiography. And then, there are some first-hand accounts of a Tibetan monk called Dharma Swami, who visits Nalanda in 1235, almost 40 years after Bakhtiyar Khalji has raided that area. Bakhtiyar Khalji is himself killed in 1206 by his own second in command in 1206, when his troops are trying to cross the Brahmaputra river and trying to go to Tibet to loot the Tibetan monasteries. So in 1235, Dharma Swami says that, Nalanda is still functional. There are around 70 monks studying there. Only 2 Mahaviharas out of 14 are functional. And the last teacher of Nalanda, Rahul Sribhadra, is being continuously harassed by the Turks who are based in Odantpuri, which has turned now into a military garrison, military headquarter. And they continuously come and loot and raid and then go back. So these are the last days of Nalanda. And we hear from, the last we hear from about Nalanda is by Dhyan Bhadra. Dhyan Bhadra is a Bihari monk, a monk from Magad, who says that he was ordained at Nalanda Mahavihara in early 14th century. And he then proceeds to the courts of Kublai Khan and to China and South Korea. So that's the last we hear from about Nalanda. But Nalanda disappears from public consciousness only in India. You have by 15th century foundation of another Nalanda, and in Tibet near Lhasa, and this institute is named after Nalanda. It's called Phenpo Nalendra. Nalendra is what Tibetans call Nalanda, they call Nalendra, Sri Nalendra. And Phenpo Nalendra is founded in 15th century, just just after Nalanda is physically destroyed in India, or disappears into oblivion, and then you have this Phenpo Nalanda functioning it's still functioning actually. And in 20th century, you have institutes named after Nalanda popping up all across the planet. You have in Nalanda in Brazil, in New York, in Toulouse, in Australia, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Singapore. So now Nalandas are everywhere. So the idea of Nalanda in a way never dies. Nalanda slowly, disappears into sunset. Bakhtiar Khalji's attack is one of the events which hastens its disappearance. But you have to correlate this whole event through what was happening in the Indian subcontinent. I gave you an example of what was happening in the 10th to 12th century in India. How North India was politically divided, economically weak, and militarily weak. Plus also you have to see the other things which are happening. Declining patronage to Nalanda and other Buddhist institutions in the Magad. Because of the Bhakti poets in the South India, you have more focus on ritual. What we know as Hinduism today is a new word. Earlier, Hinduism is known as Vedic Brahmanism and Puranic Brahmanism. So you have the rise of Puranic Brahmanism by the 9th century. And declining patronage to Buddhism. Bakhtiar Khalji's attack adds to that process.
Thank you for that. You were born and raised in Nalanda. How many of you knew that? I didn't till I finished reading that book. You just decided one day, I've been seeing that area for a very long time, I must write about it. The first question I asked, the idea of writing or conceptualizing this entire book, what were your first thoughts? Should I capture its lost story, or should I capture it so that for posterity people should know what it used to look like? Because when I googled Nalanda, there was a 2016 article by BBC, 2-3 random ones here and there, and here we are sitting at a heritage we don't have intellectual trademark for, we can't claim it, and now there are schools all over the world with our name. How are you course correcting it? Question number one. And what are the efforts right now to bring it back? And what are the dates? By when?
Well, so I am mainly a poet. I'm not a historian. So, and I have mostly written books of poetry. And in fact, I had written a poem on Nalanda. I think I should read that to you, And that's what led me to the book, Once a publisher saw this poem, and it's called Rise of Nalanda. Forlorn under the red earth, buried for centuries, I rise today like phoenix, 700 years later, from the ashes of my burnt books. I open my arms today to embrace you. Whoever you are, from wherever you are, come, walk into my enlightened fold, as once Buddha and Mahavir did, seeking shelter in my groves. I remember Itsing and Swensang, the scent seekers from the east. I hear the footstep of Aryabhat in my ancient compound today. You too come. Come as I rise again. And about the efforts to revive Nalanda, so the publisher saw this poem and asked me to write a book on Nalanda, which I was very skeptical about, but it came as a responsibility because I am from Nalanda and nobody has told the story of Nalanda in a way it should be told. So and researching for this book was opening a Pandora of information for me. I mean, I was like almost shocked to know to see these facts and not knowing any of these while growing up in Nalanda. So it was rewarding. It was enriching myself, and in fact, also I discovered the philosophy of Sunyata, and made paintings on that philosophy, which was exhibited at the National Museum, along with the relics of Buddha. So it came out as a revelation to me, and personally, it has changed my life. Writing this book. So so this has been a project of passion, and also about telling the story of the place I belong to. And the revival of Nalanda has been a work in progress since a long time. So it was in 1951 that the first president of India, also from Bihar, Rajendra Prasad, he led the foundation of Nav Nalanda Mahavihara, not very far away from the ruins of Nalanda Mahavihara. And this is a deemed university under the Ministry of Culture. It is still functional, and this was the first attempt. Then there have been several attempts since then to revive Nalanda, and the latest one was in 2006. The idea of founding a Nalanda University on the model of the old Nalanda Mahavihara was given by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam in the Bihar Assembly, and which was later on approved by the East Asian Summit countries. And in 2010, our parliament passed a special act creating Nalanda International University. India has only 2 international universities. Both were created in 2010. Nalanda International University and South Asian University. And this Nalanda University has been built with great efforts. It's functional now. It was inaugurated by our Prime Minister last year in June. And while he was inaugurating the new university, there were ambassadors of 17 countries present at the event who are partners of Nalanda. And it has a beautiful 500 acres campus in the near ancient city of Rajgir, well known as Rajgir today. And it has a unique architectural design. I would recommend that all of you should treat yourself with a visit to the ruins of Nalanda University and the new Nalanda University. Both are uniquely designed.
Thank you for that. Yes. We're just opening up the floor, especially the young ones at the back who are nodding. Please raise your hands for your questions. We're going to take as many as we can, and we wrap the session. Please, in US Polo, black shirt, over there. Yeah. Can we give him a mic, please? I'll just do that. Sorry, what's your name, sir? Rishi. So, who has the, okay. Please. Puchiye.
Quickly.
So, we need to keep time.
Hello, Abhay sir. So my question is regarding the course correction aspect. As you talked about how in Nalanda education was imparted as something which was inherently good in itself, and right now we are seeing the movement where education is being used as a means to an end and not in itself something which is pursued for being good in itself. So how did education in Nalanda was trying to build education in that sort of narrative, that it is something to be pursued which is inherently good in itself and not just a means to an end.
Yes, you are right. That's what, so knowledge itself, the pursuit of knowledge itself was the end. That's why they were pushing the boundaries of knowledge together, these students and professors. And the whole purpose was to seek truth. It was not to find a job in a multinational company. So that was the difference. Today, education has been commercialized in the sense that, you do for 3 years this course, do an MBA program, take a loan from the bank, and once you find a job, repay it. So that's the model now. But the model at Nalanda was that education was meant to search answers to the fundamental reality of nature, the fundamental truth of life, So that's why we had, if you are just studying for a job, I'm sure you will never find zero.
Your answer? You got your answer? There's who raised his hand earlier. You can take the mic.
I have a quick question. The marauding horde of Turkic invaders, they destroyed Nalanda as part of our consciousness that the library burned for months. Is that knowledge, can that knowledge be retrieved, what was destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khilji and his hordes? Is it possible to retrieve that knowledge?
Well, I mean, what has been lost, has been lost. It's but what is important from Nalanda, it's not what was in the library, but what was their method, what was the process, that process we are not following, anymore. So what I said, the takeaways from Nalanda, the 3 takeaways from Nalanda, which I enumerated, they are as important today as they were at Nalanda. And that's why they led to the, first-rate thinkers. They led to the, scholars who were able to find truth, they were able to go to the edge of knowledge, what humanity has, because the process they were following, and that process is important.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Rishi, please, before.
Thank you so much for this beautiful explanation. I mean, I've been to Bihar and Nalanda a couple of times, but the guide did not even explain 5% of what. So it was all about destruction. I think everybody talks about destruction of Nalanda, and that's been the focus. And we leave very sad from the Nalanda because we felt everything is lost. But I just wanted, you mentioned about this Shunyata concept a couple of times. Just in a few lines for us, what is it? What is Shunyata? It's very intriguing, when you say this.
Right. So see, I mean, it's very simplistic to focus on the destruction. Please remember that history is much more complex than it appears out in newspapers or in movies, etc. So please always be careful, because nobody really knows what was happening in 12th century India. They just go to the destruction. So nobody knows what Nalanda went through over centuries. And nobody really knows. I am ashamed to tell you this, that in Nalanda we have forgotten Shariputra and Mogglayana, who are like legends in Thailand and in other Southeast Asian countries. I had no idea about Shariputra until I started researching for the book. So, and why Nalanda University was built around the monument of Sariputra, around the stupa of Sariputra. So it's very important. Who were the great teachers at Nalanda? Does anybody know? Why did Nalanda become such a famous university? Who made it? Have you heard the names of Dharmakirti or Shilbhadra? No. But everybody knows Bakhtiyar Khilji. So see, what you are doing is you are just playing the colonial narrative, They exactly wanted us to do this. So focus on one lightning rod and then forget the rest, So anything which is simplistic and I mean, there are no monuments, no statues, no of for example, Shariputra or any of the people in Nalanda. Nobody remembers them. But you have a place named after Bakhtiar Khalji called Bakhtiarpur.
A village.
No, a city.
Or
A city.
yeah.
So see, this is what happens, that when you forget your own teachers, your own great men, and then remember the invaders, So this is, or remember some. So this is the typical thing which one should avoid. So remember those, if you really care about Nalanda, remember Shilabhadra. What did he do? Remember Dinanaga, or remember Santa Rakshita. Today the Tibet Dalai Lama is the living expression of Nalanda, because Tibetan culture, particularly the grammar, the language, is a gift of Nalanda. The religion, the Vajrayana Buddhism. I have not talked about Vajrayana Buddhism, but Mahayana practice of coming back to Sunyata. Sunyata is a concept in Mahayana Buddhism, which comes, and it simply means the emptiness of independent existence. So when Buddha, he got enlightenment, his main theory of Buddha is not the Four Noble Truths, what we know today, Four Noble Truths and Ashtamarg. His main doctrine is Pratitya Samutpad. It's called the theory of codependent origination, which means that anything cannot exist independently. To give you an example, day cannot be there without night. So everything has to exist together. And therefore, when there is a suffering, when there is a dukkha, there is a cause of dukkha. And then when there is a cause of suffering, there is also a solution to suffering, because everything is dependent. So that Sunyata is that theory that it's the emptiness of independent existence. So nothing exists independently. That's what Buddha says. And that's the basis of Buddhism. And that's why, the Heart Sutra, in fact, you should all read Heart Sutra. It's one page long, and Heart Sutra says that, it begins with the Rupam Sunyata, Sunyatava Rupam, or the form is emptiness, and emptiness itself is form. But I have an exhibition on Sunyata itself. Please visit if you have time, and you will understand Sunyata in a better way. Sunyata is, it takes a lifetime to understand Sunyata. Those who understand Sunyata becomes enlightened.
Nice.
I'm afraid due
Sorry,
to paucity of
Just a
time, we
quick
can't
one.
take any more questions. You can continue the
I promise
conversation.
to be a quick one.
With
For
the
the
author.
gentleman. One last.
Very
So
quickly,
my
very
name is
quickly.
Shreyas and I'm a columnist. Thank you for the enlightening session, actually, a lot of revelations. And I'm glad that you spoke so much about Buddhism. I have a pressing question on the most contemporary development. You have spoken about the sociological divisions, which ultimately led to the demise of Nalanda and the rich culture we had. We kind of see, as we do the course correction journey, we also see the resurrection of the same trend, by a cabal of dishonest intellectuals, or the woke lobby, or I dare say, Africanist Dalits, who identify themselves as, how do we, especially in my generation, which is not very well informed about the historical facts that you just enlightened us of, how does one fight these social engineering trends, which is coming from horse's own mouth, academicians, if I must say. So if I would love to know your take on that.
So to simplify your question, how to counter the WhatsApp University with Facts University? That's what you're saying.
I'm afraid it's more than WhatsApp. It's legitimacy laundering. It's coming from erudite intellectuals.
Yes.
One of the guys sits in Harvard who talks about this. So
Yes, in fact, even Amartya Sen, he's a Nobel laureate and also played a key role in the foundation of. But when I saw his article, he talks about the destruction of Nalanda, so it does happen that some narratives get played out continuously. If you repeat it 10 times, a lie becomes a truth. So it's important to therefore read. So my only suggestion to the younger generation is read, and read, and read books, so that you get a full picture. Most of the time, we try to watch a podcast or, read an article and form opinions. But it's very important to read books and because, the truth is much more multi-layered and complex most of the time. 99.9% of the time. So it's important to read books. And I think that's the only way. If I would not have written this book, even I would not know the complexities of Nalanda. So it's important that you pick up this book, it's there outside, and read the book.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much. The book is available. Please read it. We must support thinkers like us, and if you don't make the small effort of having a conversation about it or a discourse about it in your personal social media and your friends, then there's no point. Thank you for your support, and this was wonderful.
Thank you.